Tell us about growing up.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tinuade Oyelowo, just so you understand how to say that name. I was born actually in Houston, Texas, and was raised in Florida. However, my father, I'm the child of an immigrant. My father's Nigerian, and my mother is from the South. So at an early age, it was already kind of put into my brain that there's something else out there, because my father kind of represented what wasn't your typical black man in Texas, for that matter. So that was already on my consciousness. And then being the child of a mother who was an artist, she also implied, like, you need to make sure you're going out in the world and seeing that it's not just what is right in front of you, but rather there's much more to swallow and to digest. And so, yeah, that was kind of the start of everything. I would later end up going to school in Seattle for my undergraduate, and that would take me eventually to Milwaukee. And I just want to clarify, I'm actually not a performing artist, I'm a performance artist. So it has a little bit of different implications. If you have any questions about that, I can let you know. But specifically, I often use issues within that I'm dealing with, working with my body, social conscious issues, social justice issues rather, and to create work. And it's often ranges in different mediums depending on what I feel.
We have some images here, and I'm just going to scroll through, and you can kind of talk as I do that.
Yeah, this is, I worked with a collaborator, Kemia Harper. She was a graphic designer, and we created this. It actually is a stop motion film. It's about 30 seconds. And this series is called The Fucked Up Diary of a Queer Nigger Woman. And so what I did was we actually cut out every single one of those words, and they are parts of a poem that I was in Chicago. I was kind of dealing with identity at that time because Chicago, I'm sure you are aware of, has a lot of issues within segregation in the city, and it's embedded in the city. And I kind of came from, I was in Milwaukee for a year, where it's incredibly segregated, and then moved to Chicago thinking this was going to be the place that I was going to live for the rest of my life, and was confronted with this growing issue within this community that had seemed somehow resolved by not dealing with it. Even though there are many, many people that are working hard to fight and break that system down. But needless to say, I started a series where I just wrote out free thoughts about my identity. And in that time, that would then lead to what would be this. So these were almost like visualizations, I call them. And the idea of this film is that these words would slowly creep up this person's body until eventually you'll see there's no red balloon there, and that's because essentially that has escaped. The red balloon being innocence, being these concepts of vulnerability, of naivety. So there's two different perspectives. You have the perspective of the person that from the day they're born, they're told they're other, they're in a marginalized community, and they're constantly trying to fight, right? And then you have the other who, however, become informed that there's other people out there that aren't like them. However, there's this structure that nobody really talks about in their community. Therefore, I'm not going to say anything because my dad doesn't say anything and whatnot, and so I'm going to continue living my life as if everything's fine, right? And I'm going to assume that the people that aren't like me are equally as fine. And so with that, you have to start figuring out ways, and often it comes from both panels, but it's first identifying that there is a problem, right? It's creating a vocabulary and a vernacular that people can gravitate to and understand. And then from there, it's not so much, so we're all in these systems of this structure, this line of equality, right? And, we have some people that have it great up here, it's like white male heterosexual person, has it, maybe not great, but let's say financially also stable. Let's put that up there too, right? And so then underneath there, you have this tiered system where maybe economically not as well off as someone else, but you still fit the other criteria. It's not as bad, and so forth and so down. And then you have women, and then it falls even further into breaking down the race structure. And so it's understanding that just because you're up here, it's not, oh, let me feel guilty about this, because guilt doesn't actually do anything. It's not a productive thing. But it's through understanding privilege, because we all have it. I'm an able-bodied human being. I come from an educated space. We all have privilege. So privilege is not necessarily bad all the time, but it is something that we do have to acknowledge as individuals. So understanding our elements of privilege and where we fit, and then making sure that the people that may not have those same privileges, we can pull them up. That's how I feel like you can effectively create not only equality, but more global understanding of a global empathetic person, if you will.